Today, I would like to welcome all of you to a special episode of the Men's Room, where today I've got Malcolm Macleod with me, and we are going to be taking an exploration. And the question that we're going to answer today, and it's a personal choice as to whether you believe that psychedelics are a means or a medicine that you could use to take a trip, or if it's something that you believe is not for you and should skip. The choice is completely yours, and we want you to know that we will not be going into any of the legalities of this option. We are more here to talk about the options, the benefits, the risks, and everything in between. So, Malcolm, would you do us the honor of telling us a little bit about who you are and how you even decided to go down this road of exploration?
Yeah, yeah. That's first off, I would say that's kind of like trying to put the ocean into a glass as to how I got to that space. But I'll definitely try and give um, a little bit of a background to myself and maybe what are the factors that led me to get into that space in my late 30s, I may add, was when I first considered that. And I would say that, I was to to the outside world, I was just, a very normal boy. Um, um, but I found life very, very hard from quite a young age. Um, and um, I I didn't have um, any high quality support around me, I would say at all. And I feel like that could sound so diminishing to the most amazing people in my life. I love my parents, I love my family, I love my friends. But the challenges that I experienced in my life, I didn't have, um, I guess you would say, modeled and supportive emotional regulation from those people around me. And so I definitely felt that I was moving through life in with no with no I was rudderless, I was aimless, and I was just hanging on by just I was just existing, but existence was there was very little joy or purpose in my life. And you go through the various phases of your life. You then go into teenage years, you then go into adulthood, and I I with having very little emotional tools or regulation, encountered variety of different problems that would come along as being a teenage boy, um, transitioning into adulthood and trying to make relationships of quality and depth, if that be, having a wife or being in a position to have children. Um, and, you know, the there was a real challenges with navigating the external world, but the internal world was essentially a shit show, and it was chaos, riddled with anxiety, riddled with obsessional thinking, and even as you transition out of childhood into adulthood, was still no real resources or support networks that could assist me in doing meaningful work. The love was there. I have, as I say, lots of loving people, but the meaningful work to transition your life from being, um, I've described it as hell on earth. I don't apologize about that. But to transition that to, when I was in like my 20s, was it was just how do I transition that into a life where I can just get by and function to a basic level. At those points it was just like, you know, those sort of lives of normality that you would see around you where people work 9 to 5 jobs and this, that, and the other. And it's like, I'll take that. Um, but I definitely, as I went further on in my advancing years and I got into like my mid 30s, I definitely felt that the burden of the resistance and pain within me had um, reached a breaking point. Um, and that that it was this existence was so no longer worth the juice was no longer worth the squeeze, something along those lines. And so I wanted a way out. Um, and I I messaged my girlfriend at the time and um, told her that I wanted to take my own life. And um, she, I guess it was like one of those moments in life where um, I guess something truly amazing came through her. But she said to me, she said, um, "Nobody's coming to save you," um, and that something about that just um, hit home in a way that I've been looking all my life out with myself to find someone that could guide me or help me because I felt so lost and in so much discomfort. And she, in that moment, took that pressure and that expectation totally off the table and said, "It's you and you alone." And I guess from that moment, that was around, well, it's not around, I know the exact dates, it was November 2017, is that started a process of it was a switch, something flipped, and I started the the process of um, day by day, minute by minute, trying to turn, as I would call it, like to talk about like big cruise liners changing their trajectories. Like, how do I turn this cruise liner that is absolutely 180 degrees going in the wrong direction? How do I start that? And that was then a process of, um, I guess you would say, awakening and and self-introspection. The introspection was always there, I may add, but from a new perspective. And um, I started to go down various paths of improving my well-being, because it was a shit show from top to bottom. My entire body was riddled in pain. I was bedbound. I had a lot of surface level relationships. There was a lot of dysfunctional behavioral traits that were absolutely going in both directions, and I was being a person that didn't feel in alignment with who I wanted to be in the world. And so I had to figure out how to release the aspect of myself so as I could start putting the greatest version of Malcolm out there to the world. Um, and so, yeah, started a, a process of healing, I guess you would call it. And I did many things and tried many things, lots of breath work, meditation, sound baths, um, lots of talk therapy, um, and definitely felt like the the ship was turning. I was seeing progress slowly but surely. Um, but within that process of deep introspection and expanding your capacity to be more open to other opportunities and different conversations was the conversation just started to come more and more into my airspace um, um, with um, one of my friends, with my brother, and with my partner as to this option of looking at doing a psychedelic journey because there were so many experiences and references from that community, I may add, um, that um, there could be massive benefit to me considering going on a psychedelic journey. And that led me up to at age 38, having my first ever psychedelic experience.
I'm speechless here of all the things that you have shared. Thank you for being vulnerable and opening up to how you spent a good portion of your life coming to that point where you didn't want to be here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're
Thank you
here.
so much.
Um, that is, yes, that takes a lot of, I guess, courage to take that moment where you said it was off the table, that you had someone that could help you. You were looking for help, and that's not what you got. I will say in that moment of feeling like you had no one to guide you, that you took that wheel of the ship and you decided that I'm not in alignment. I need something different. I want something different. I can, receive, and you spoke about how you tried all these different modalities, and that you were open when you heard about the psychedelics and how you could take a journey, and you're open to that. And so I guess what I'm curious about, and some of the critics, might say that, are you, getting a deeper understanding of yourself when you go on these journeys, or are you escaping? Because depending on the modality, there could be some escapism that could happen. I mean, that is true, because there's things that we can do to escape, and there's reasons why we would maybe go down that path. However, I've also heard people describe this experience, this journey, as a way that you would get an insight, and it could bring you to a different state of consciousness where you could have some experiences that can be that guide for you. And so, I've heard both sides of the conversation. And so I actually want to hear, our listeners want to hear from your experience. How would you answer that question about whether or not you're escaping, or if you're getting closer to getting clarity from this experience, and why this particular modality? Because I think that in all modalities, the personal choices and what works for one person may or may not work for another person. And so it's a matter of the openness to trying and experiencing different things, to seeing what is most in alignment with what you need in that particular time.
Yeah, first caveat is I may go off on tangents, so you might have to bring me back to like, I'm like, what was the question again? So feel free to do that at any point. I can do that. But I guess sort of from what I gather is sort of is this idea of someone using it as an escape or using it as a tool for a deepening of their journey and a looking for answers. And I think exactly that is person specific, um, as to that the person going into it has to go, am I doing this to escape my reality, or am I doing it to find out something, a deeper truth about myself? And so for me, is how I would frame that is obviously, as I say, I never uh, took any psychedelics in my life. There were opportunities to, but I never took any until 3, 4 years ago. Um, so prior to that, I could give you the biggest list imaginable of the things that I would use to escape my pain and the present moment and the discomfort in my mind and body. Food, pornography, sleep. I would sleep all the time. Um, I could go on and on and on. But where I got to on my personal journey was I was going to sound baths. I was going to breath work um, events. I was going to men's groups. I was going to these things to reveal the greatest aspects of myself and remove those parts of me that no longer served me, and to go live my greatest life. And so once the option, like so many things come along, there are so many options available for us, in this world, to heal ourselves, to um, assist us in getting into our greatest expression. And it's just a case of is what is available, and what choice are you going to make? And in that moment, I softly decided that I was going to try psychedelics. And I think as well is if I'd gone and had my first psychedelic experience and it was an experience that didn't reveal much, or um, I didn't get much insight, I'd maybe go, I'll try it again, try it one more time. And if it hadn't worked, I would have then pivoted onto something else. Because in the healing community, as I say, I've tried endless amounts of different things. And so many of those things I've tried, nothing really happened, and I've pivoted on. And some have circled back to 5, 6 years later. So I think for me is I had used so many things for escape, but in the last 6, 7 years, is anything that I was lean into to assist me was not to escape the present moment, but was to get into relationship with the present moment in the most impactful way.
So what would you say when you went through this first experience was the thing that told you, that gave you the insight that, yes, this is for me and this is the benefit that I'm getting?
Yeah, it's interesting because just as we'll continue the interview, is my first ever experience was with golden teacher magic mushrooms, and that is not my medicine of choice. I would say averaged out now, and we'll come on to the medicine that I've used predominantly over the last 2 years. But I took golden teacher magic mushrooms, and I think that the there was a plethora of different experiences that came along that were of all kinds of textures. But I would say that for me was glimpsing into silence, the quieting of the mind. It was since the age of 4 or 5, I've never not thought thoughts. I've never not had relentless thinking. And it is just such a weight of people don't realize it when they're in it, is that just thinking all the time is energy, and it is just so depleting, especially when the texture of those thoughts are um, not to your apparent benefit, and that there's not really much utility in them. It is draining when you stack on days, weeks, months, years. I remember when I was in my mid-20s and I went to see a psychologist and they did an assessment about my ruminating thoughts. And the women said, they went, the level of obsessional thinking and rumination you have, they said, uh, most humans within a month would have a complete mental breakdown. And they went, you are now 24 years old and have been living with this for over 15 years every single day. So if you then fast forward and add about another 13 years on top of that, when they shared that with me with still pretty relentless thinking, to then take to have an experience where it quietens. I'd done so much meditation and a variety of practices that will quiet the mind. But I would say that that glimpse of silence, which then brings about it with it a profound level or glimpse of peace that I had so desperately wanted. Once I got taste of that, I then was very much like this. I'd like to investigate this space further. Off of off of that alone, there were also other benefits that were, pretty cool, but that was the standout element for me.
Yes, and so the quieting of the mind and eliminating or reducing those thoughts that were coming, I think that that is one of the largest benefits, because we can get into our head, have those ruminating thoughts, and to live that way, it causes you not to be able to regulate your emotions or even the physical parts of your body. And so you're saying that you were able to quiet the mind, which in turn, I'm thinking, brought on that more relaxed state, that less anxious state. And when you would have these experiences, would you say that, you know, how long after the experience would these effects of quieting the mind? Was it just during that time that you're having the experience, or was it longer lasting once the experience had concluded?
So yeah, that's a great question. And again, with this, as you say, are you using it for an escape, or are you using it as a tool to help you heal and grow? And so for me with psychedelics is my intentionality from the first moment to the last experience I've had is every time is the intentionality to become the greatest version of myself and to release anything that no longer serves me. Um, and all those thinking, what was the question again?
Well, I just really wanted to know that when you have the experience, like some modalities that you experience, it will last during the time that you're experiencing it. And then for a little bit after, other things can shift things on a more permanent basis where it becomes the way that you live. And so you're able to experience, let's say, a moment of anxiety, and you have tools and mechanisms that you can get to that place of calm, relaxed state quicker and faster. So we're talking about using psychedelics as a tool to get to this place. And so I just was curious how long the effects were for you personally once you experienced this, and do you feel that this is something that is a period that you go through, you get to a place, and then you don't want or need to do it as often, or is it something that becomes a regular habitual part of your life that you incorporate?
Absolutely. Well, I think again, everyone's journey with plant-based medicines is unique to them. And sometimes people can go in and have a one and done experience, and something will rewire, or they'll have a moment where they realize something, and that they then go back to their life and they're altered for the positive, and get on with their lives. And then you have other people with differing experiences. But in relation to sort of the point about finding that peace and that quiet, and then is it just isolated to the experience of taking the psychedelic, or does it carry over into other parts of your life? Well, for me, is that most of my intentions are, when I go into to the psychedelic space, is to have that internal peace and that infinite God within to be revealed to me, so I can remember it again. Because that's, once you experienced it, it's you're like, oh my God, this is a God-given right. I can't remember ever. I don't remember ever having this experience. To talk about that with children, like in guided meditations, they'll say, go back to a point when you remember being calm and peaceful. And I've never had that. And so for me, when I would have these guidances that would lead me back, I'm like, I don't know where I'm aiming for, because I've never experienced peace. So once I experienced it with the assistance of the medicine, and I got a taste of it, and that taste, if you want to get addicted to anything, is getting addicted to that taste is literally what we're here to do. Now, using a tool that you have to take in order to get there, totally don't support that. But using the tool to give you the access to it, to remember it, and then what I do is, when I'm in my psychedelic space or my journey, is I then use tools and wisdom and speak to people in these communities as to how do I anchor and connect to that peace, connect to that calm, connect to that regulation, and how do I bring that into my everyday life? And so that's why I revisit it, is I go to experience and get back to that peace. And then if there's anything blocking that peace, like program, trauma from my childhood, I will then go in and try and navigate and work through that and release it or alchemize it. And then each time I do that, I feel more peace and more calm on a zoomed out level in my life. And so if you say to me, if you were to say one of my close friends in my life that know me, um, if you were to say to them, say, right, this date here, you're in Malcolm's energy and space. Is this guy relaxed? Is he calm? Is he, you know, in control of his environment and allowing things to flow? From that point to this present moment, they'd be like, he's a totally different guy. Because I've used the medicine as a tool to then bring all of those practices. Like my breath work prior to doing medicine journeys was, I was getting up and I was doing my breath work every day and I was punching it in and trying my best. But once I started utilizing breath work with medicine, it changed everything. And so now when I return in the normal state, is my breath work has so much more depth to it, and I don't need medicine. So now I can actually use my breath to alter my state, and I don't actually need the medicine to do it, because the medicine helps me to connect to that in a more quality way. And so for me, is, and this might be something we maybe come on to later in the podcast, is I I don't need to keep taking psychedelics for the rest of my life in order to remain happy. I've already used so many of the tools that I was building in my tapestry prior to taking plant medicine that they now all have so much more utility and they're working so much more effectively because the psychedelics assisted me in relating to those in a more skillful way. The caveat to that is some people, I'm off and running, some people would say, well, why not just do breath work or meditation or those things and just grind it out for 30 years? And then you'll get to that point in 30 years, or whatever. It's like, I want to have an amazing life now. I thank you, Linda. Thumbs up. I don't want to wait and go, well, Linda, I did my breath work for 30 years or my meditation, and I'm 67 years old now and I'm happy. I deserve happiness today. And so I am going to do whatever is required in my highest good to generate that.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. You really broke down why a person would want to experience psychedelics, and you spoke to it as being the tool that, when combined with other modalities, could get you to the effects quicker and faster. Because you're right, any tool that we use in our toolkit where we could consistently use it over time, the trajectory could be long in getting there. We could be consistent and get there, like you said, at 67, or we can fast forward, combine a couple different modalities and get there quicker and faster, which is really the goal. Because you're right, we want to live a joyful, purposeful life now, and we don't want necessarily to have a trajectory of 67 years. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly in that. And I've found in my own journey that different modalities, some worked for me and some didn't so much. Some I had to do more than one time in order to get there. For me, breath work was something I struggled with, and I could not get the breathing in a way that I wasn't holding my breath trying to do all the exercises. It felt like I was having to force myself in a box. When I combined the breathing with visualization or meditation, then it started to click. If I just did one modality by itself, I was focusing so much on trying to do it correctly and do all the steps to get to the end goal, which is, like you said, to have the peace, the calm. And for me, I just need the relaxation in my body, because I tend to tighten up everything. I'm a very high strung, high energy person. And I can always tell when I'm out of alignment is because I'm forcing myself to take that breath so that I can continue speaking or doing said things. And I can feel the tension in my shoulders. I mean, all my life I've been in places and spaces where, like, okay, Linda, your shoulders do not belong up by your ears, get them down. and so really the breathing and the meditation visualization combine all together, I can get there really quickly because I've taken the time to try different things and align them. And another thing that I'm thinking about as we're talking about this is, there maybe a type of person or an experience where combining the psychedelics would not be a good option, that you like something you've come across, or maybe even an experience that you had during your journey?
Oh yeah, well yeah, the I think that again it's the psychedelics can obviously there's many different ones and they can vary in the texture of the experience that you're going to have. Um, and so I think that that a lot of the time, if people are going into an experience and they are going in a closed and restricted manner, um, the medicine is probably going to show them that experience and textures that relate to that experience. Um, However, if they go in with an openness and a trust, and openness and trust, um, things that are so important in regards to that is environment. We haven't gone on to that, but um, the spaces in which I've journeyed have been with the most incredible people that have experience in these spaces, um, and are able to respond to what is happening for the journeyer with skill, meaning that if challenges come along, those sitters are able to assist um, that space and tailor to what is required in that moment. Um, but yeah, is it if someone is pressured into it when they're not ready, um, would be the potentiality for a more challenging experience. And so for myself, is I'm doing this podcast now. We discussed all the topic matters that me and you could have talked about so many, and I selected this one because I feel with this is it is one of the most amazing tools, and I have got so many reference experiences of other people that are similar to myself that have leaned into it and have had the most incredible experiences. But every time it was an invitation, and they were given the time and space to come up and ask curious questions and then ask for where they could get high quality facilitation from. If that just be someone that's experienced that can sit with them, or actually in certain countries you can go and get things like MDMA therapy and go on psychedelic journeys in like Costa Rica and things like that. And so for me, anyone that is being pressurized into any sort of psychedelic experience would be a major no for me. And for me, it's about having conversations like this, and if it sparks curiosity for people, then once that curiosity is sparked, is giving them the guidance and assistance in finding the best community and the best spaces that can facilitate them having the most rewarding journey for them.
That's a really, good point that nothing, no matter what modality we're going through, should ever be something that's put upon a pressure that you must do this, you will do this, because we all have the capacity to take a decision on whether something is right or wrong for us, and the timing that we're going to choose to do something, and having other people that you have that are responsible for making sure that the assistance is there, that they're facilitating the experience. That's really important, because I'm thinking that a person that hasn't gone through this experience could have an experience that needs support during that moment, because maybe during that moment they're brought to a place that they have to confront that they aren't ready and prepared to go down, and they need someone that can step in and be that guide, that support, so that way there's responsibility, I guess, in the actions that are happening within this group of individuals.
Absolutely. And I think that, that brings us sort of nicely on to the medicine that that I've used. I've had my own personal biggest transformations with, and that's MDMA. And I journeyed with two people that I trusted, who had a lot of experience in this area, and they knew me well as a person. They knew my background, um, and my first journey with MDMA specifically is what happens a lot of the time is when you drop into yourself is you a lot of the time will come face to face with those parts of yourself that you deny, that you pretend aren't there. What MDMA does is it takes the lid off of the subconscious and it gives you access to whatever is there, and it's revealed to yourself. And usually, especially for someone like myself that had built and accumulated so many painful experiences, is once that lid came off for the first time, is it was like, what's that thing where the clown where it just went boom, and it was the most intense 24 hours of my life. And um I to anyone, to so many people, it would be like, that sounds like the worst experience you could ever imagine. But because I'd done so much work in my spiritual journey and worked on myself for years and lead up to that moment, was that once the moment passed, is I had a level of aftercare from those two people that was available. They were there. I lived with one of them, and she was attentive to my needs. She prioritized time off work to go for walks with me, to give me emotional support. The other gentleman was able to, I was available to call him at any point. He would continuously check in with me to see how I'm doing. Um, and so as I went through that integration process of everything that came up, um, is so I just lost my train of thought a wee bit. Um, what was it again that you'd said
Yes, we were talking
originally?
about the importance of the responsibility to be able to have individuals in the experience that can provide that aftercare for the things that come up, those emotions, those feelings. Yes.
And that's it. And with MDMA therapy, which is which is what I would consider that I had, is all that stuff came up, and then there was the safety and the space to move through what came up, and I would then and then later that week, about 3 days after that experience, I I was sat there curiously because I was just like, okay, I've had that big experience, but I feel intuitively called to go and experience it again because that was scary, but I I could handle it. And 3, 4 days on, I'm starting to see progress of what came up. And so then I decided, because I'd only heard of MDMA in relation to my peers using it as a party drug. So I didn't have any other association at that point. And so at which point I Googled, MDMA healing, and it brought up uh, a man called Bessel and he wrote the book Body Keeps the Score. And I was like, oh, he's speaking about MDMA. And so I watched this 10-minute clip, and he was speaking about this top seven healing modalities he has seen for trauma and PTSD, and got to number two, and number two was yoga. I was like, wow, yoga's not number one. Number one, he said, was MDMA. He said they've not come across anything that has as high an impact when used correctly and in the correct environment to help people um, release and move through trauma from especially their childhood or traumatic experiences. So for like men that have maybe been in war, or you know it could be a plethora of different things. And that was number one. And that was a reinforcement of my intuition that although my first experience with MDMA was super challenging, was that what had happened was um, that something was that something very much right had happened, and it needed further investigation. And then that was then the process of me investigating, using that as a tool to help me with my trauma and to release um, those um, pains and issues that had been in my system for so long.
I really appreciate the conversation that we're having today, because I would think that, a lot of times these different modalities that are available to us might not be done or used in a respectful way. As you had mentioned, that your first knowledge of MDME had to do with it being a party drug, illicit use, as opposed to using it for healing for trauma and PTSD type situations and more. And so the education that you're bringing to our audience has been extensive. So not only have you brought awareness to another modality, you've spoken about the positive way that psychedelics can be used to be able to get to a space of where the outcome really is not to continue using the psychedelics, but to take care of the underlying condition or the thing that's even in the way in the first place. And
Absolutely. And yeah, sorry, Linda, and that's the you've absolutely nailed it, is because I wanted to make that clear, was that when I take psychedelics, and you asked a question about escape, is I don't use it to escape the present moment. I use it to release and reveal within me what is blocking me from my God-given right, which is joy, bliss, peace. That's everyone's God-given right. And so I use psychedelics and other tools to get to whatever is blocking that from getting there. And I think what was interesting, I'd taken a wee note just in case this came up, was um, after I had that couple of experiences with MDMA, I was actually in Canada at the time, and I returned back to Scotland. And I obviously was like called to further that journey. But I was now back in a country where MDMA is illegal. And one of the most imperative things, again, that was handled by those amazing people was the did their due diligence to source the highest quality MDMA, so there would be no additives or anything within it that is not of the highest quality to get the best quality experience. And so I was told that one of the aspects of why my journeys were so profound was the quality of it, and that I'm invited to not take any risks at all with regards to that. And so with that, I went back and I did not have any medicine for a year because I was asking around within various communities and spaces, and my intuition was that a few of the spaces I got into, I couldn't fully intuitively trust that it was the highest quality. Eventually, I managed to connect with an amazing person who was able to put me in touch with someone that I was able to get something, and I have been so appreciative of the quality of what I received. Um, but that person, so I just think that's important, is again, is if anyone was ever to do it, is that there is no cutting of corners with regards to what you ingest, the environment you're in, or who you're doing it with. Those are so important. Um, but when I returned, I said to my friend, I was like, I want to journey again, but um, can I journey on my own? And he sent me this document um, by what's called the Castilia Foundation. And they're a center for research on consciousness expansion. And they have this 90-page document on how to solo journey. And it's an amazing document. And I've given it to a variety of people who have said it's awesome. And I really read that document and I'm not a big reader, but I read that document in great detail. And one of the things that they say in the document is that people would historically take MDMA, ecstasy, to go out to a club, to evoke a feeling, to escape their crappy jobs and their crappy lives. They go out with their friends and they take it and they go, oh my God, I feel euphoria. I feel ecstasy. This is incredible. They would then return home. They would then have the fallout of being out, maybe drinking alcohol, dehydrated, poor sleep, surrounded by all kinds of energies, good energies, but there are also other energies. And then they would feel depleted. And then a week later, they're like, oh my God, I want that high again. And so they would take it again. Whereas what they say in this document is that when you take the medicine for reasons to clear and remove the aspects of you that you no longer resonate with, is that when you continue to use the medicine in a very conscious and highly respectful way and trusting way, is that when it removes those aspects of, oh, I'm in a social situation and I feel embarrassed by being myself, or I feel that I'm not aesthetically pleasing, and all those things come along, is as you go into your deep medicine journeys and you start to realize that you are amazing and you are whole and complete, and that those things start to, you're like, I don't need to hold on to those anymore. Those are illusions. They're not for me. They were never for me, but I believe the hype, so to speak, of my not enoughness. Is as you start to reveal and remove those aspects bit by bit by bit, is that what happens is that when you go out into a nightclub or you go out in a social situation with your friends, you don't need to take anything because you got rid of all of the things that were holding you back. And so for me, when I maybe do hit into the edges of people in my life that are concerned, going, are you a drug addict or various things, is with regards to things like this, is I'm like, no, I plan on being in everyday life peaceful, joyful, blissful every day, because the medicine removed, assisted me, and not the medicine didn't remove it. The medicine assists you in going into yourself to remove it, and that's where that document is amazing because it explains it in a more academic detail than I do. But that's you're getting what you're getting from me. So yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing about the 90-page document. I'd like to be able to include it in the show notes for all of our audience, should they want to read more about it. And what I'd also like to do is to have you share a little bit about what you're working on right now and how people could reach out to you if they'd like to ask you additional questions of curiosity about psychedelics, or if they would like to learn more about what you do in your coaching. And so I'm going to go ahead and toss the mic back over to you and let you share a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm a holistic coach and have been, I think I've been certified for 4 or 5 years now. And so I can do one-on-one coaching with men and women, and mentoring as well. I'm inspired by mentoring. And so I have that, and that gives me the capacity to travel beyond. Well, I'm currently in Canada, so that gives me the capacity to do that. But I'm also building a business at the moment with my partner Pamela, and it's called the Interruption Lab. And currently we have a skin of a website. Our one of our very good friends is building the website as we speak. But yeah, we're looking to create a space where people can come and they can have an immersive experience with us, where they can essentially switch off to the outside world for a period of time, and they will have tailored, um, I guess you'd say, assistance and toolkits from Pamela and myself in order to help them journey and move through a variety of different things. This isn't strictly linked to psychedelics. I must say this is that there are many different tools, as we've discussed today, but we are passionate about so many of the challenges that people have is that they don't they can't get out of their environment, and changing environment is so important. And so giving them an environment where two people and our team beyond are tailored to them. And in addition to that is, I believe, for people to move through challenging limitations in their life, is that importance of safety. That was the thing that I waited 35+ years for, was to experience what safety looks like. And we take pride in offering that safety to whoever comes into our space. And just one more thing I would add to that is our offerings will not just be localized to our premises in Canada. We are also got the capacity and the desire to go and meet people all across the world that maybe don't have the capacity to come to Canada. We're so passionate about helping people become the best versions of themselves. So passionate is that we will go to other people's spaces and we will set up arrangements and we will communicate with local people and places in order to give them the experience to have the life that they deserve.
That's beautiful, Malcolm. And I would love to have you in Washington State of the United States. So let's make
I'll
that
be there.
happen.
Yes, well, let's do that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that concludes today's edition of the Men's Room. So if you'd like to reach out to Malcolm, we'll have the information in the notes. And if you would also like to come in or know someone that would love to be a guest on the Men's Room show, we are looking for all men and women of all different walks of life, experiences, and we are all here to learn and grow with one another. So thank you.